This is a live mic check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
My buzzer is buzzing.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The Board of Selectmen's called to order at 6 o'clock on March 5th, 2020. The first thing we're going to be doing, of course, we're with the Budget Board for the first time for the fiscal year 2021. And we're going to do the municipal budget presentation, and Lori and her team is going to present, not all of it tonight, of course, but a portion of it. But before we do that, I'd like to go ahead and, I'm looking at new people in the audience and at the Budget Board, and I'd like to go ahead and go around both tables and introduce ourselves.
We do have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
I can see
Yes.
you do.
You had any more, you'd need another table.
Keep multiplying,
Yeah.
like rabbits. My name is Barbara Barwise, Goose Rock Beach.
Kai Leffler, Goose Rock Beach. Michelle Powell, North Street.
Dave James, North Street, Ducks, Village Residential Zone.
Alan Evelyn, Brookside Drive.
John Dykstra, Grove Street, Foxbury Woods.
Stedman Seavey, Cape Porpoise.
Dan Beard, Cape Porpoise.
Dimitri Michaud, Town Street.
Stephen Turner, Land's End Road, Cape Porpoise.
And David Bettis, Beechwood Ave.
Ed Hutchins, Cape Porpoise.
Jill Matthews Bull, Cape Porpoise.
Alan Daggett, Cape Porpoise.
Patrick Briggs, Cape Arundel North.
And we also have Mike
Monkey
Weston
Town.
from Cape Porpoise.
And we have Mike Weston.
Can you
I'm
hear
in
us, Mike?
Margaritaville.
We can't hear
I'm in
Mike.
Margaritaville.
No.
No. We can see him.
We can see you. Can you hear us, Mike?
Yep, I'm in Margaritaville.
Could you speak up, Mike?
Yes or no?
We're working on it.
Dan, microphone back, please.
Oh, that's where it came from.
You want to announce the officers?
In our spare time. The Budget Board met prior to this evening, and we have elected Barbara Barwise as chair, Kai Leffler vice chair, and Steve Turner as secretary.
Great. Is that a life appointment?
Like sentence.
If we don't get started, it's gonna seem like
I
it.
know. Well, I'd like to be able, I don't.
No,
I'd
I
like
know.
Mike be able to.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. How about, can you hear us?
Well, greetings from Margaritaville.
Okay,
We'd rather be where you are.
so I guess we'll go ahead and move along. I'm gonna give this to Lori Smith. She's gonna present the budget, correct?
Yes, thank you very much. So my name is Lori Smith, and I am the town manager of Kennebunkport. And I thank everybody here for spending some time with us over the next few weeks to talk about something near and dear to us, and that is the budget. So to go over some preliminary information, everybody should have in your front folder a budget schedule. Probably it was emailed to you some time ago. But it has the dates all the way from October through June. So right now, we're smack in the middle of the page on March 5th. So tonight, we are going to have, over the next 3 weeks, joint meetings between the Budget Board and Selectmen. So these are meetings where both will deliberate over the budget. And then on the fourth Thursday, the Selectmen meet on the 26th. To review the budget and make their recommendations. The Budget Board are more than welcome to attend, but you do not have to attend on March 26th. What staff then does is take their recommendations and we send it out to the Budget Committee so you know what the budget recommendations are from the Selectmen. And then the following Thursday on April 2nd, the Budget Committee meets alone and they make their final review and recommendations. And so then on April 9th, this says, if necessary, If there are differences between the Budget Committee and the Selectmen, I call this the Come to Jesus meeting, where we get together to try and reconcile any differences. The Budget Committee can go forward with different recommendations than the Selectmen. We can print them separately in the warrant, but in the past, it has been, I think, a joint goal of the two boards to come to agreement where they can. We then finalize all of this in the warrant and bring it to the voters in June for authorization. Any questions on the budget schedule? Your budget books you should have, you will note that the page numbers are in the middle of the page at the bottom, so we'll reference those page numbers. In the beginning, you should have a table of contents. So one thing that we also have after that is on the pink pages, we have one that is alphabetical. So the budget book is set up according to our chart of accounts, which is governmental accounting. So things like solid waste don't go necessarily in the S's. It's not by alphabet, but it goes under public health. You know, general government covers things like administration. So these are set up by accounting categories. And so that is why we also do the pink sheet. If you're looking for a department by alphabetical name, and you want to know where to find it, then you can look at that page number. We also try to set the budget up color-wise so you can follow it. So the first few pages, the blue pages, are the introduction to the budget. The yellow pages are the analysis and discussion of the budget. The salmon color pages are the summary expense report. So we just give you the down and dirty totals for each department. And then we move to the purple pages, and the purple pages all are about capital. And then we finally go to the next tab, which is our green pages, and the green pages are about revenue. After the green pages is a tab which shows our commitment estimates, and these are estimates only. You'll notice on your commitment page, which is page 65, there are some yellow highlighted numbers. These are for education and county. Those are estimated numbers only. We are not sure what those increases may be. Right now, the school budget is a little over 4% increase. It was just under when I did these numbers originally. But how that translates to the school funding formula based on how much they get from the state for EPS, or Essential Programs and Services funding, and how that then translates based on the valuation formula. It could be higher or lower than that. So if we get new numbers, I will update you on those. The county is in the same position. They are beginning their budget process, and they do not have numbers to share with us at this time, so we did an estimate on those. As you go through the budget, and if we jump to the general government category as an example on page 67, these budget sheets show the individual line items, and we try to give a description under each line item. So the first line is the actual expense, and the description is under that line item. The FY20, you'll see 2019 budget and a 2019 actual. The next column is 20 budget and 20 year-to-date. So the number for year-to-date is the date of printing of the budget, which was February 25th. That includes about a half a month of February expenses and 3 payrolls, because we only pay twice a month. We have to pay with authorization from the Board of Selectmen. So it's about 62.5% through the year. At the end of each department, you will see a graph. We call these the Dan Beard graphs. And so they are reflective of the categories of expenses within that department to give you a visualization. After you go through all the department budgets, you will get to your nonprofit tab, which is page 300. That is the social service agency requests and recommendations. About 7 years ago, the town decided that rather than go through all the social service agency requests, what used to happen is all the social service agencies would show up and they would make their individual pitch, and there would be a lot of discussion back and forth, arguing about $100 here and $200 there and $50 there. And so what the board decided to do at that time was have a subcommittee from the budget committee. We now request those funds in advance. That's why we start in October. You'll see in our budget schedule. We get that information. We have an application they submit along with backup data. And then the Social Services Budget Committee gets me their recommendations by early January. And those are what I submit in the budget. So what you will see is this spreadsheet on page 300 that the subcommittee came up with for their recommendations, and then a memo after that. And then we put in here some of the basic information if you wanted to review on those social service agencies, usually their application, etc. What happens now in the budget process is we traditionally have not spent a lot of time reviewing those social service agencies because of that process. David, do you have anything else to add to that, or?
No, I'd just like to point out that, lest people misunderstand, that last year we agreed to transfer the life support service, helicopter service, from a non-social service program to a social service program. So there's an increase indicated there, and I forget the exact amount of dollars it was, 668 or something.
868.
Yeah, okay. That was an increase in social services, but there's an equal decrease over in miscellaneous budget where it was budgeted last year. So there's no really net change there.
So does anybody have any questions or comments on anything I've covered so far? Okay.
It's well laid out. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. So, based on feedback we received last year, you guys told me you didn't have a tolerance for the amount of budget I tried to accomplish in one evening. So, I do listen to you. And so, tonight, I am gonna do the budget introduction, which we'll do next, and you should have a green sheet. This is just like school, so you can follow along. We have the green sheet, and that has the agenda for tonight about what we will try to accomplish. So on the third Thursday, we do capital, but you will see on the agenda that Tracy, town clerk, is going to be doing capital tonight, and that's because she has a conflict on that third meeting. So in general, we will do the overall operations down to animal control. And then next week, we will have a review of the other operational accounts. Then we have a selectmen's meeting afterwards, so we tend to try and keep that budget meeting shorter. The third Thursday, we will then review capital, and we'll review social service and miscellaneous agencies. And then you'll have gone through the entire budget. So we have staff in the audience who can certainly answer questions. Jen Lord, our finance director, is here. And so certainly if people have questions, they should feel free to ask them as we go. Don't feel like you need to wait until the end. Okay, so I'm going to head over there. So you guys might want to move a little. So I'll nod at you when I'm ready, okay? So like all budgets, FY '21 is more than just you went too fast. I did. Is more than just expenditures and revenues. It is a strategic planning document for the town of Kennebunkport. As I meet with all departments, committees, and agencies, we discuss town goals, challenges, and how they can maximize the resources with which the citizens entrust us. People often say to me, Kennebunkport is a small town. And in fact, we are a small town with 3,500 year-round population. What I don't want lost is that we do have a complexity about Kennebunkport. We certainly have a much larger seasonal population. We have a rather large valuation. To give you an idea of our students, we are currently about 14% of the RSU 21 student population. But Sheila will tell you how much we actually pay for that. We have approximately 10 municipal buildings. We have 2 commercial piers, one in the river, in Kennebunk River, and the other at Cape Porpoise. We have a large amount of cemeteries that we monitor and maintain. We have 48 miles of road. We have a number of miles of sidewalk. We have a large infrastructure in sewer, both in our treatment plant and in our collection system. And then to give you an idea of our parcels, we are by and large a residential community, as you can see. As I stated before, the budget process begins way before tonight. We start with discussions with departments in November. And we certainly look at how that will impact the next fiscal year with challenges. After the budgets are submitted to me in early January, we begin those conversations and analysis and continue that with the departments in the finance department. As February rolls on, it's my job to take and make the tough choices regarding priorities, needs, and wants. I work with my staff to bring the Board of Selectmen and Budget Committee a budget that balances our strategic planning with fiscal capacity. The Budget Committee and Board of Selectmen will review the budget over the weeks ahead. By mid-April, we'll need to finalize our numbers to place them on the town meeting warrant. The voters then will ultimately determine our funding at our June 13th town meeting. So, we'll head right into the budget. You can see that the entire budget is approximately $23 million, and education is about 50% of that, and 5% for county, which leaves about 45% of the budget for municipal services. If we look closer at our municipal operations by category, you can see that certainly we are a service-driven organization, which means about half of our budget is for personnel, wages, and benefits. And you'll see that this year, capital expenses is almost 17% of the budget. Most municipalities in Maine, you'll see a very similar chart to this. Our revenues are projected to increase by just under $100,000 or 3.7%. Although these revenues only make up about 14% of the total budget, because we do not have the ability to fund, as in other states, through local option sales tax or lodging tax, and we really depend on the property tax in the state of Maine. But all those non-property tax dollars are very important to us, even though they are a small percentage, and they're an important mix to our funding model. So we search for new revenues each and every year. Another way to look at the budget is you can see operations, debt, and capital, and about 3/4 of our budget is on operations, with 1/4 being invested in assets and infrastructure. Each year, some line items go up and some line items go down. We do our best to examine them each and every year. However, I do try to analyze what are the budget drivers each year. And as you can see, it is this year capital, debt, wages and benefits, and solid waste. Capital investment has caused a major increase in expense. I have tried to mitigate that with a transfer from our capital reserve account of $325,000. Debt service is increased because this is the first full year of interest and principal payments for our village parcel, as well as our Ocean Avenue seawall bond. As we discussed, half the budget is made up in wages and benefits, so it's not surprising that each year that is a driver. And this year, we are looking at the return of curbside recycling in the budget, and so that is a large increase this year as well. So what will you see different or new in the budget, or what particular emphasis do we want to discuss? Certainly communication and postage. Communication has been a focus over the past few years. Almost half of our taxpayers do not have a local mailing address, which creates challenges in keeping citizens updated on town projects, issues, and changes in operation. We maintain a town website, a Facebook page, an Instagram account, and we also produce 2 newsletters, one in the spring and one in the fall, as well as our annual report. The budget shows additional postage funds in some accounts to allow for additional mailings to keep residents informed, as well as collect on accounts receivable. Last year, we talked about sustainability and resiliency. We are certainly known for our beaches, ports, and waterways, and protecting them is very important. 80% of respondents stated that they were concerned about sustainability in a recent Growth Planning Committee survey. They've listed it as their #1 top priority, which is environment and natural resources. Over the past couple of summers, we have had some interns to help us with water quality monitoring, solid waste education, and analyzing our carbon footprint. Those interns have made progress. However, there is a lot of work that needs to be done. And I've really been looking at how we maintain that level of commitment to that over the year. Rather than look at hiring a person year-round by ourselves, I did contact the other coastal communities from Kittery to Kennebunkport, and had several meetings last year with the other managers. They are facing similar challenges without staff resources. And I discussed within the idea of doing this jointly. We also have partnered with Southern Maine Regional Planning Commission and asked them if they would be the employer of this individual. And then we could work certainly on joint issues, but on our own individual goals and challenges regarding resiliency and sustainability. The Board of Selectmen agreed to fund $7,500 out of contingency in this year, and all 6 towns quickly voted to support this. This is like a small miracle that 6 towns quickly acted in this direction. Our annual commitment for this position, we agreed to a 2-year trial period, is $15,000 a year. I estimate that if we were to hire one individually, we would probably be in the $90,000 range. So to me, this is a much more cost-effective way to not only move us forward in this area, but to have a broader outlook on how this impacts our region. Last year, Budget Committee members will tell you that we talked a lot about solid waste. I think we had 3 or 4 presentations on solid waste. People will remember that our budget was turned on its head due to the Chinese national sword policy. The recycling market was glutted, and it was difficult to find even markets where you could pay to recycle materials. The town was not able to continue to recycle due to over $200,000 in additional costs in curbside pickup, new processing fees, and new contamination fees. The Board of Selectmen appointed a solid waste committee who are developing a path for the town to limit additional costs but reinstate recycling. The proposed budget contains the funding to return to curbside recycling. The additional cost for curbside is $106,000 annually. This, together with the estimated processing and contamination fees of $42,000 and supplies for education for the public of $4,000, and the addition of a summer intern to assist with education and enforcement of $6,000, total $158,000. But in order to try and mitigate the impacts on the budget, as I said, I worked diligently to look at anywhere that we potentially could find some savings. Curbside recycling is a driver, but as part of my desire to lower the impact, I have not included funding for the cardboard dumpster at Dock Square parking lot, which is $42,000, or residential recycling containers. In the past, the town maintained 2 cardboard dumpsters, one in the parking lot and one at Bradbury's store. The Cape Porpoise one was removed this winter when Bradbury's was no longer able to support the level of labor required to operate the compactor and the dumpster. The surrounding towns are now all charging for the disposal of waste and recycling, and unfortunately, we have seen an influx of cardboard entering our community. The cost for removal of cardboard jumped from $11,000 in fiscal year 19 to over $40,000 annually in one budget year. As I debated the various budget priorities, I contemplated the wisdom of Kennebunkport taxpayers subsidizing the cost of cardboard from businesses and residents outside our borders and removed the dumpster from my proposed budget. I also removed the blue bins. Since we don't have a user fee system, residents are not required to use a particular container as long as it is clearly marked recycling. I have determined that residents are capable of purchasing the bin that best suits their needs and will work with the Solid Waste Committee to purchase stickers which residents can adhere to their bin of choice. We talked a little bit about wages and benefits. Certainly, wages and benefits make up about 50% of our budget. We do have contractual increases in the budget as well as market rate and job rate adjustments. So as you know, we are in a tight labor market. Municipal employees are difficult to find who are trained. We have been certainly training those that we've hired without experience. But those with experience, we do recognize when their responsibility levels increase and spend a good deal of money training to keep them engaged. Another change that in the budget is we are looking at a reduction in hours for the part-time nurse. For people who don't know, our public health department is made up of one full-time director or nurse, a part-time nurse, and over the years I've been here, those hours for the part-time nurse have varied. We have had as much as 24 hours, and we've had as few as 16 hours. We are proposing, as part of the reductions in the budget, to go back to 18 to 20 hours per week. We would continue to maintain the same services that we have, and we would be reducing the benefits for that position due to the change in hours. That is a savings of a little over $27,000 a year. You will see some changes in utilities. There is a reduction in CMP expense because we are proposing that the town purchase 280 active lights from Central Maine Power. The cost for the purchase is $58,500 from the capital account, but the annual savings from renting lights is projected to be $23,000 a year. We are also seeing an increase in water charges across all departments because KKWWD is looking at a 6% rate hike, and that impacts us the most in our fire hydrant rentals, and that increase is about $8,200. We are happy to say that we do have a reduction in our insurance. We changed vendors last year, and one of the changes we did see was some flattening of insurance premiums. We also are happy to report that for calendar year 20, our modification rate for workers' comp went from 1.35 to 0.88, which was just about a $20,000 savings. A modification rate, if you don't know, is a rate that is used against your premium. It can make it higher than your premium would normally be, or it can give you a reduction. So 1 would be you're paying just what the premium is. Anything above 1, you're paying an additional amount because you've had bad experiences. And anything below 1, you're getting credit because your experience in the past 3 years has been determined good. We are also seeing a reduction in our legal budget of $25,000 due to the end of the Goose Rock Beach litigation. So, debt service, as I noted, was up this year, and before you, you'll see our debt service schedule for the next 20 years. We are seeing an increase, as I noted, because of the first full year of principal and interest payments for Ocean Avenue seawall, which is $1 million over 10 years, and the purchase of the village parcel, which is $10 million over 20 years. It is important to recognize that debt service is a part of our capital plan. You can see our debt service detailed in this chart. In FY 2025, I've highlighted in yellow, a balloon payment on the village parcel bond will be due. The debt was structured in this manner to allow the town the most flexibility in bonding. Should the town decide to partner with a private developer over the next few years, it also allows the town to pay down some of the debt service early. In 2025, the plan would be that we would amortize that over an additional 15 years. But there is a portion of our bond that is called private, and part of it that is tax exempt bonding. And so if the town develops a plan between now and then and sees that more of it will be used for public purposes rather than private, then we can take advantage of a lower interest rate. Here's our debt retirement schedule. So the next debt retirement will be a wastewater bond in 2024. And it's important to note that we need to manage our debt as part of our long-term strategic financial plan. So the budget this year is a lot about capital investment, and what you're seeing here are some of the projects that we need to be concerned about. If as I noted in my budget, if we had a slogan this year, it would be "The future belongs to those who prepare for it." As our facilities and infrastructure continue to age beyond their life expectancy, it is more important than ever to plan for the future. Our 5-year capital plan totals over $17 million, including everything from administration to wastewater. The largest items in the plan are wastewater projects totaling over $4.5 million, a town hall at $3 million, fire engines and building renovations of $2.3 million, public works vehicles and road projects at $2.8 million, the Cape Porpoise Pier project at $2.4 million, and a radio replacement upgrade at $1 million. Although these numbers seem overwhelming, I am presenting a capital reserve and debt management plan to accomplish our goals. The reserve plan will capture $11.5 million of the needed $17 million. Supplementing our local property tax dollars will be grants from federal and state agencies, trust fund accounts, and donations. As you can see, our capital improvement budget for FY21, there is a large portion dedicated to buildings and facilities, about a third to infrastructure, and then a smaller portion for admin and equipment. I'm going to review some of the larger capital projects here, but not intending to go over each and every one. We do have $400,000 proposed for building reserve funds. These are planned for renovations to the village fire station and a new town hall. The long-term plan is to reduce the number of fire stations from 4 to 2, which would be located in the village and at Goose Rocks Beach. In order to meet future town needs, the village fire station, which we're sitting in tonight, will be required to accommodate additional trucks, offices for the fire department and Kennebunkport Emergency Medical Services, as well as bunk rooms for paid staff. The current estimate for these renovations is $839,000. Around 2000, the town had planned to replace the town hall and fire station at 6 Elm Street. Eventually, the fire department moved to this facility here. However, the administrative offices stayed at their current location. 18 years later, the facility does not accommodate meetings of any size with staff or the general public, does not offer the proper storage facilities for important town documents, has no waiting space for the general public, does not provide for privacy when dealing with sensitive personnel or public matters, and is extremely limited on parking. In FY19, we budgeted for a municipal facility needs study conducted in late 2019. And it was determined that approximately an 8,200 square foot building would accommodate not only our current but our future needs, and would include a meeting hall space for public meetings, which will be needed when this room here is converted to bunk rooms and office space for the fire department. Capital in vehicles, we're looking at about 301,000 in this coming year. Part of that is 130,000 to replace a ladder truck in FY 2024. The department has completed a long-term replacement schedule for all fire apparatus through 2034. This plan projects the use of funding from the Kittredge and CV trust funds as well as town appropriations. We're looking for 31,000 to replace a 2010 police vehicle, and a request of 140,000 to reserve for a fiscal year 2022 replacement of the 2004 International 7400 tandem axle. The total amount will be 280,000 to replace that truck. We want to continue to maintain our road and sidewalks, and we have asked for $414,000. This is reduced than it has been in the previous years, as we have spent a sizable investment on infrastructure. But we need to maintain, and this money would help rehabilitate Wiles District Road, Walker's Lane, River Road, Ocean Avenue, and it would resolve a drainage issue on School Street. We are also asking for $70,000 for the widening of shoulders along Wiles District Road to improve pedestrian access. For Parks and Recreation, we have a total of $47,000 request. You'll see on the left is our tennis courts on Beechwood, and you'll see in the next two pictures some of the cracks we have. The ice rink the tennis court has been a long time without much capital funding, and we're looking for $45,000 to not only take care of a drainage issue behind the tennis court, but also resurfacing of the tennis court. We also have our new ice rink, which was very popular this year when the weather allowed. And but the liner we need to replace with a heavier duty material in next year. I talked to you a little bit about the street lights. We did do a study on this and worked with our street light committee. We have monies requested for replacing and purchasing this, purchasing the street lights from Central Maine Power. This would create a savings in our operational budget, but we will need to maintain them ourselves in the future. We are also looking to continue to put funds aside for our Cape Porpoise Pier. There are some issues, structural issues at the Cape Porpoise Pier, and we are currently working with Baker Design Consultants on a phased approach. We are applying for Maine DOT Small Harbor Improvement funds as well as boating infrastructure grant funds. And the total construction cost is estimated to be approximately $2.5 million. We are hoping to supplement our $1.2 million of property tax investment with grants from state and federal agencies. As I talked about, we have quite a few needs over the next 5 years that have been identified in our capital improvement program. Each year, the selectmen review the capital improvement program, and it is a living document. That means that it can change from year to year in terms of priorities as more information becomes apparent. But this is a large number, and so part of the goal in this budget process is to start putting away funds to help us get to meet our goals. What I've tried to develop that you have in your budget is a capital and debt management plan. You will see on the left-hand column the different projects that we have identified, and I have the larger projects here. If we have a reserve account currently going, whether there is a current balance in that account, and what kind of funding level I am projecting that we would put into it over the next 5 years. You can see to the right, we have a subtotal amount and what I project our actual budget will be. You can see that on many of them, we will get to where we need to go. Town Hall, for example, is one that over 5 years, we would be at $1 million. So I think at that point, the town would take a look at its priorities and perhaps it might consider a bond for a portion of it, or it might continue to say we still need to reserve funds aside. Our radio communications that we'll talk about on the Capitol night in more detail. It says over there 1.5 million on the 5-year budget. We recently had a meeting after this budget was printed that looks like it'll be more at the $1.2 million range. My concern is that I'm not sure we'll make it 5 years before we'll need to make some large infrastructure investment. But we can do things with leasing, et cetera, maybe 3 or 4 years in, depending on how that need develops. Under fire, we have our SCBA, which are those bottles. They will need to be replaced in about 6 or 7 years, and they will have met their life expectancy. We need about 280,000 is what we're estimating, and after 5 years, we'll be at the 250 mark, so we still have a couple of years that we can reserve funds. As I talked about, we're looking to get a ladder truck and a new engine in FY24. We've been putting monies aside, and if we continue, we should be just shy of that $1 million in FY24. The engine, we are planning on having the Kittredge Trust Funds pay for that. And then the fire station building reserve, we're looking at putting $200,000 away a year, and in FY24, we'd be our 800,000 mark. Under Public Works equipment, in the past, Public Works equipment has been up and down depending on the need that year. I'm looking to smooth that out and put a more consistent level of funding in that reserve account each year. So over the next 5 years, we can meet our equipment needs. Roads and sidewalks, Mike Claus, our Public Works Director, has a plan for the next few years. And we're looking at about that level of funding to continue to maintain the investment we've previously put in. As I stated on Cape Porpoise Pier, we're looking to try and gather about 1.2 million as part of our match to other grant funding. And if we continue to put $250,000 away, we should be able to do that. I'm also, we are currently talking to the state about doing a phased approach on the replacement project so as not to interrupt operations at the pier, and it will allow us to have the funding necessary in the year that we're doing that particular portion of phase. So you can see the general fund subtotals there. We end up with about 8.5 million, and then you add to that our wastewater fund. So the budget committee doesn't review the wastewater budget, but I wanted to show it as it's a big portion of our capital plan. We'll be looking at making an investment with some of our wastewater reserve funds for a clarifier in press this year, as well as we will need a new clarifier, and we have 2 clarifiers and 2 presses. So we're looking to replace one of each this year, and then in a few years replace the others, as well as put some money into our pump stations. As part of our capital and debt management plan, here is our bond payment retirements. I talked to you about when they will be up. You can see that the next one is 2024, which is $1 million in wastewater, and what I'm showing you is what our payment would, the payment reduction that year would be. We also have $400,000 bond for police building addition and a $450,000 note for the Parks and Rec addition, and those will be coming up in 27 and 28. And you can see that the wastewater fund pays for 40% of the wastewater bonds, and the general fund pays a portion as well. One thing I would tell you about this budget is this budget to me is about capital, capital, capital. And I really looked and scrounged for every operational dollar I could to not have as large an impact on the tax rate as possible. When I started this process, the municipal tax rate increase would have been 75 cents. The budget that I've produced here has a municipal tax rate increase for municipal of 32 cents. So that means that each year the contingency budget has been about $30,000. Well, that is about 1/3 of 1% of our municipal budget, which means that there's not a lot of leeway. So if we were to have a bad winter, if an employee were to change from single health insurance to family health insurance, if I had a police officer leave and I had to hire one and send them to the police academy, any one of those little items could really put this budget in flux. And so I let you know that you may want to consider additional contingency funds because there is not leeway in this budget. If we review the FY21 expenditures from your commitment sheet, you'll see up top that I've broken municipal budget into operations, capital, and debt. And you can see the increases accordingly. As I noted before, the education and county budget numbers are estimates. I don't have final numbers from either one of those agencies. The non-property revenues, we are seeing an $85,000 increase in general non-property tax revenues, as well as a $15,000 increase in revenue from recreation programming. That's that transfer we make from the Special Revenue Recreation Fund. In past years, I have recommended a reduction in the use of the undesignated fund balance. So if you're not familiar with what undesignated fund balance is, so we say we're going to spend $10 million and we spend $900,000. That $100,000 goes into the fund balance. And what our fund balance policy says is that we will keep 18% of our budget in fund balance in order to help the town offset bad times. So it gives us cash flow perspective as well as if there were an emergency to be created, then we would use that fund balance to help balance that out. That is a industry standard in terms of fund balance policies. At the end of each fiscal year, anything above 18% is the selectmen can then transfer to the capital reserve fund balance. I am happy to report this past year we were able to transfer $500,000 to that account, which currently has a balance of $786,000. You'll also see this year I am suggesting that we make a transfer of $325,000 from that account to help offset some of these capital projects we've discussed and those reserve funds to assist us and to smooth out our increased funding levels. So, for those who don't know how a tax rate works, I just thought I would take a moment and say what happens is we look at the total budget that's approved and we subtract any revenue. So all those non-property tax revenues we've discussed, those get subtracted from the budget. And then we divide that number by our valuation, our taxable valuation. And that's how we come up with the tax rate. That tax rate then gets applied to your assessed home value, and that determines what your property tax is for the year. So for the assumptions we have here, we have a net total commitment of $19.9 million for FY21. I have estimated in an increased valuation of $15 million. So you can see that each year our valuation usually goes up. The past 2 years we've seen between 20 to 28 million in increased valuation. So 15 is a conservative estimate. If these were to play out, then our mill rate or our tax rate would be $9.96. Now keep in mind this is assuming those education and county numbers are also continue to be accurate. That would mean a total increase of about 50 cents or 51 cents. If we look at our municipal portion individually, you can see that operations, capital, and debt, our total would increase 4 cents for operations, 11 cents for capital, and our debt would go up about 17 cents out of that 32 cents total. So, I would like to take a moment and thank my staff for their assistance with the budget that's before you tonight. I'm proud of the work that we have accomplished together. I certainly did not do it alone. The department directors, the finance director, Jen Lord, and my assistant, Arlene McMurray, worked tirelessly as our team to meet our goals. By working as a team and making decisions at the department and manager level, we are able to present a reasonable budget that sustains town assets in the long term without overtaxing the citizens in the present. I want to note that the reductions made for this final manager's budget are not ones that I would heartily recommend or request, but oftentimes it was about making the tough decisions and the various needs of many departments and focusing on the most pressing challenges, planning for the future, and presenting a defensible tax rate. I anticipate that the Selectmen and Budget Board will weigh these same considerations in their review in the weeks ahead. So, with that, we'll start the budget process unless anybody has any questions.
Yeah, hi, Dave James. Comment and a question. One, a very thorough overview of the budget. Thank you very much. Going back to curbside recycling, you said that the cardboard dumpster at Dock Square will disappear, but I assume with curbside recycling picking up that the residents will have cardboard pickup with that.
Yeah, and
Do you expect that, since a lot of the cardboard that went into the Dock Square dumpster came from commercial businesses in Dock Square, that they will be funding something to handle that, or what's going to happen to that?
I think that is one of the challenges because of the tight area that they're working in. You know, those businesses don't have a lot of land to put a dumpster of their own up. And so we certainly will still pick up as we do now, and if they put their recycling out just like the residents, we would pick up their recycling as well every other week. But I think it is going to be a challenge for those businesses.
Yeah, because often when you go to that dumpster in Dock Square, it's filled to the top, and it's not so much from residents as it is from the businesses that have a lot of
Yeah,
cardboard. to
yeah,
get rid of.
especially in the beginning of the season, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I think I can speak loud enough without the mic, so.
We'll put it here anyway.
You indicated that the workman's comp, you have a modified rate for this year. And basically, how was that accomplished? You said you changed the vendor?
Well, workers' comp, we had the same vendor, but we also had insurance vendor change. So we had been with Kennebunk Savings Insurance. We did bid our insurance out last year. And we are with Maine Municipal Insurance, which created some savings. The workers' comp rate, we had a high 2 years ago of 1.45 was our rate. We went down to 1.35, and now we are down to 0.88. Certainly, we've been working with our safety committee to certainly minimize injuries at work, as well as we try to get people back to work. You know, we have a work in place program. But sometimes it is the luck of the draw and those injuries, and we did have some severe injuries that finally were resolved.
I've had some experience with it, and there's often misclassification of people. And I don't know how many different classifications are within the current insurance, but I would assume, given the breadth of employees, there's 6 or 7 or maybe even 8 different classifications. There should be, because certain, office-type jobs, I mean, that's...
Right. We probably have, I want to say, 15 or more classifications. Some of the highest ones are harbor master and firefighters. But each year, our workers' comp also comes in and audits us, audits our payroll, and that's another chance for us to look at how they're classifying us, and they'll send us that, and we do review that.
Also on the curbside, I don't know, you have a separate committee that's working on that, right?
You're sitting next to the chair,
Other
the
side.
other one.
Is there a limit on what each household can put out each 2-week period, or can they just put a house full of stuff out there?
A house full, depends on what a house full is, but
Well, I've seen on curbside recycling days, I've seen half a truckload of stuff.
Yeah. We have not had that problem in the past of too much material. If it does get to that point, we would need to certainly work with citizens on that. But normally, the vendors that we've had in the past have been able to collect whatever the citizens have put out.
Don can answer that, but there will be a well-defined definition of what is recyclable. You don't throw out refrigerators and old ovens and stuff like that, so.
And they'll be left if they do.
Okay, well, I figured that, but it's just, also, on the purchase of lights, the street lights, do you know, or have we been able to learn what the maintenance of those lights is, the cost of actually, now that we own them?
Yeah.
When we get isn't maintained.
Right. And so we have built into our operational budget, we've taken streetlights out of our utilities department and we've created a separate, so we can track that differently than we have in the past. And Mike Claus will come to you and talk to you about that. But we have set up a budget with maintenance built into it, and we are talking to a couple of different vendors about helping us to maintain those lights.
Well, and long-term, Lori, isn't the plan to replace incandescent street lights with LED lights that are going to considerably reduce?
We currently
Electrical
have been
consumption.
replacing the bulbs with LED bulbs in the current platter lights. But we certainly can also replace those fixtures in the future.
Laurie, I have a question about the contingency fund, which you mentioned was scaringly tiny. Do you have a recommended amount, whether it be so many months budget, a certain amount that would, based on historical needs, whether weather related, et cetera, would be more desirable, and then factoring a little bit of a buffer in addition to that?
We've never had a policy about that level. Sometimes the contingency fund has been dependent on things like fuel oil prices. You know, when fuel oil prices were jumping up and down, the town had put some additional funds in there to kind of buffer that. And so it has used that. It has, I got a conservative board here, and they would prefer not to have any money in there that they don't think we need. I would think that, you might want to, in a theoretical world and classroom, you would want to maybe look at 1% of your budget. I think for our purposes, you might want to look at 60,000 instead of 30,000, It's just simply a change in health insurance or sending someone to a police academy. I could spend 20 to 25,000, like that. If we had a rough winter and we needed a lot of extra salt or overtime, I could spend 40,000. So all I'm saying is there's not a lot of leeway if we have a bump in the road. So with that, I'm gonna go over here. And Jen, you want me to click for you?
Oh, you can if you want. You don't have to, I can do it here if you're good with that.
Nobody can see you in your corner.
No hiding, Jen.
That's right.
Mike, can you see me? See, Mike can see me too.
So let me just say a couple of things.
Okay.
So we're gonna start on the administration budget. Which is page 67. So administration covers a lot of things that aren't covered anywhere else. And we'll go through those, but it also covers town hall except for planning and development. So it covers the town manager's office, it covers finance, it covers the customer service windows, town clerk, elections, things of that nature. So Jen is the finance director, and she is going to give you some broad overview about the finance department and also give you some hints about looking at the budget and understanding some of the acronyms.
Thanks, Lori. Hi, everybody. Good to see you again, and new people, welcome. So, Dave, can we get there we go. And if we go to the next one, I just have some stats to share with you. Fiscal year 20 townwide budget totals, 23 million. General fund was 21. Enterprise funds were,
And can you just explain general fund versus enterprise?
general fund is our regular operating budget. Enterprise funds are accounts that stand alone, like our piers, the sewer, Dock Square parking lot. And then we have our special revenue funds, which is now recreation, which stands alone, but the money they bring in is used specifically for programs. So in fiscal year 19, we had online transactions that have been processed through iPark, which is that's our Dock Square parking lot. Rapid Renewal, which when you re-register your vehicles online, you pay through there. The MyRec program, and Point and Pay. Our Point and Pay allows people to pay taxes, they can pay parking tickets, things like that, all online. So fiscal year 19, we had just over 47,000 transactions totaling $1.3 million. Fiscal year 19, we processed over 2,000 checks relating to accounts payable. And as Lori mentioned earlier, our accounts payable warrants are just twice a month. Fiscal year 20, tax bills, we had 3,605 real estate and personal property bills, of which 54 were liened, which is really a good amount. It's low, so that's good. Our sewer totals for fiscal 19, 1,541 bills with 26 accounts that were liened. So moving along, things you'll notice in our budget is we have retirement choices. We have Main State Retirement, or we have ICMA, which is a 457 deferred comp plan. Employer contributions are listed here. Plan AC is all office personnel. Plan 1C is police officers. I've shown the employee and employer contributions. And now they've added a new plan, so anybody hired after July 1 of 2014 is in a new plan, AC. On the next page, we talk about our health insurance. We are a PPO 500 through Maine Municipal Employees Health Trust. We budget an 8% increase starting in January of 2021. We also have a health reimbursement account, and that's administered by Group Dynamics. Now, some other information is some acronyms. If you would please turn to page 68. Throughout the budget and in the different departments where we have employees, you'll see these things come up frequently. ICMA, which is number 1203, is International and City Managers Association. That's that 457 account. We have Maine PERS, or MSRS, which is the Maine State Retirement System. We have for health insurance a PPO, Preferred Provider, which is under 1205. We have FICA, which is a federal insurance contribution, 7.65% at this time. Then if you would please, turn to page 83. This is where we have our retirement health savings plan and our HRA fees and the amount that we budget for the health plan. And we budget 40%. We figured the average that people use is 40% per year. And just another reminder, continuing with reclassifications from fiscal 20, the HRA and the retirement health savings are now classified under insurance because they are a breathing, living amount that changes from year to year and from department to department, depending on how everybody's health and choices are. That's it. Any questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Also, as part of the administration budget is town clerk, so I'm gonna ask Tracy O'Rourke, our town clerk, to come up and speak directly to those line items in the administration budget that deal with your division.
Hi, everybody. We're going to start on page 67, the town meeting salary and wages. This is the only one of my line items that increased this year, and that was due to two factors. The first one is the increase in the minimum wage that went into effect on January 1st, and then the second is the extra staff that I anticipate needing for the November election. So between those two factors, we did have to raise this line item a little bit. And speaking of elections, I just wanted to publicly recognize all of my election workers. They work so hard for everyone in this town, all of the voters. They love giving back to their community, and I actually have a few of them here on the budget board. And they all love the election process, and they do everything they can to make sure the voters have a positive experience. So I just wanted to say thank you to all of them. Hopefully some of them are watching. Yes, definitely. And then also to the fire department, because we literally take over their building for 2 days. And not only this room, but they move the fire trucks out for us so that the petitioners and the community groups that like to have tables can be inside instead of outside. So that is, that's a big deal for them, and I really appreciate that. And then the highway department, they set me up the day before, they come the day after. There's no way I could do all of that work without them, so I also want to thank them. And then the PD as well, they always stop in a couple times a day, check on us, make sure everything's going smoothly. So without all of those people, we could not possibly have successful elections, so thank you to everybody. Are there any questions on the election portion before we move on? Okay, so now we're going to move on to page 72. The very bottom is the town clerk budget line, and that remained the same as last year. And this is the largest portion of my town clerk budget, and that mostly pays, the training is the largest portion of the budget. And that pays for the workshops that allows us to stay up to date with the ever-changing laws and requirements that the state gives us. So those trainings are very important. So that is a big portion of the budget, and it's very much needed. I think one of the biggest challenges this coming year for our office is balancing the staff time and energy with the November election, plus everything else that we have to do on an everyday basis. It's going to be a very busy season. I'm going to start preparing for November probably in July, and that's, when we're doing beach stickers and everything else. So for example, in 2019, our office issued 76 marriage licenses, 613 certified copies of vital records, 11 burial permits. There were 42 recorded deaths and 17 births. We issued 898 dog licenses, 28 annual and 67 daily liquor licenses, 13 special amusement permits, 20 special event permits, 60 vitulers licenses, 8 non-resident recreational clamming licenses, 75 recreational clamming licenses for residents, 2 trolley permits, 2 horse-drawn carriages, and many hunting and fishing licenses. We also processed thousands of Dock Square parking vouchers and hundreds of Goose Rock Beach parking stickers. In addition, we also processed over 7,000 tax payments, registered thousands of cars, as well as 462 boats, 60 snowmobiles, and 42 ATVs. And keep in mind, there's only 3 of us in the office. So we do a lot of work, and we just appreciate the funding that we get to be able to go to the trainings and hire the extra staff to help during election time. Are there any questions on that one? Nope. All right, page 73. At the top, we have our ballots and machines. And this one actually decreased this year. We removed the rental of an extra voting machine because we're planning to dedicate all 3 machines that we have to the presidential election. Lori and I talked about it, and we're going to do our very best not to have a local ballot in November so that we can just use all of our resources for the state and presidential election. And that is going to be our best plan of attack to keep things moving along. And we do have, we have one less election this year. We won't have a primary this coming year, so that will help with the budget as well on that one. And then if you go down to the bottom, under town meeting expenses, this basically covers everything except, except for the staff that I mentioned earlier. This covers all of our supplies. And we did decrease this one as well because the state is starting to provide more of our supplies that we won't have to purchase ourselves. They now send us the voter registration cards and pens. So that helped our budget a little bit, so we took advantage and reduced that. And then finally, thank you for allowing me to present my CIP budget tonight. Again, asking for $5,000 for historical preservation.
So if people are looking, this is under capital, debt service and
Yes.
capital, or page 203.
203, yeah. It's not easy to make the preservation of records exciting, so I did bring some visual aids to hopefully make it a little more palatable. No, I think I got it. So this is an example of what the money pays for. This is a book that is similar to what we did last year, and this is the actual book that we would restore this year. So as you can see, it's busting out of the binding. The pages are, it just has things taped and put in there. There's no protection, and it's just, it's hard. And if you have to photocopy it, it's almost impossible to splay it out on the photocopier because it's so old and we don't want to damage anything.
What year is that?
This is 1966 through 1971. So that's not even that far ago.
Yeah, there you go.
Not long ago. So that's what the old one looks like. And this is what they look like when they come back. So it's nice and pretty. All of the pages are protected in archival quality sleeves. There are no loose pages. And I can actually unscrew this and take the pages out and photocopy them flat on the copier so that there's no damage.
And what year is that?
This is 1957 to 1966.
Great.
So, yeah.
Tracy, what do you do with the old books? I hope you keep them.
Yes, they're in the vault.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I couldn't let myself throw them away.
No.
Yeah.
They are part of the history. So I think that you'll all agree that these records are the heart and soul of our town and the history of the town, and keeping them safe for future generations is very important. And thank you for your past support, and hopefully we'll get to do some more books this year.
Tracy,
Yes.
when new books are made, are they made in the same way as the one that you put in the chair, or are they made now in the manner that you have in your hands?
The new books are, they aren't put like that. They're actually put into 3-ring binders for now, and then they're kept until such a time as we want to make them preserved for future. But we don't do this because we're trying to catch up on the old ones because those are so damaged. So eventually, as we keep going, we will get to the newer ones. But right now, we're just putting them in binders and keeping them safe that way.
Would it make sense to spend a little bit more money or time or whatever and do them the way that you have in your hands now, or is...
Well, we could, except that I think we're trying to get to those old ones first, just because they're so far gone.
But the current stuff that's going on that's recorded,
Yep.
you're saying is in 3-ring binders to be at a later date brought up to
Yes,
snuff?
but it's in better condition than those books are, so we feel safer just letting them be that way for now.
What would be the difference in cost roughly of doing them
your way there as
Well-
opposed to the 3-ring binder and
Yeah.
just get it done.
So the book like that I did last year that turned into this is only, there were 2 books that came back. That book is turned into 2 of these, and that took the whole $5,000. So it's just that it's very expensive, and we're trying to keep the records that are getting older and falling
Right.
apart, yeah. So if you wanted to, it would just be as much money, you could throw as much money as you wanted, and we'd still be trying to catch up.
I think the point would be if we were gonna throw more money at it, we would do more older books as opposed, because you must have backup copies of some of the things that go, you know, and everything's
I'm also
digital.
assuming that you need some volume of these
Yes.
documents in order to
Yeah.
put them in a binder like
Right,
that.
yes.
So just what you did last week and the next week
Yeah,
aren't gonna be put in a book like that immediately. You
right.
need to be a volume of them.
So how many more books do we have?
We have, I think 4 more like that, and then we have, we have valuation books. We have a whole vault full of old books that can be restored.
We're
We'll
never gonna run out of stuff to
catch up at this
restore, Alan.
point. Yeah,
Is any of it captured digitally?
no,
So there's not a scan or something of it?
no. That's another whole budget line, just in itself. So, any other questions?
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Zoning Board of Appeals.
So, I don't mean to interrupt administration, but we're not ready for you yet. I haven't done my part. So,
Can't go home yet,
He
Warner.
was hoping.
if we go back to page 67, like I said, administration covers several divisions. You've heard from finance, you've heard from town clerk. In general, as you go through the first page, our salaries and wages are included here. As I noted, we have had some contractual wage increases as well as minimum wage increases, as you'll note in town meeting, as well as market rate adjustments. So we've had to hire some new staff. They have been on a training plan. And so some of those increases have been different than just our normal annual contractual increase. And those are those wage increases that you're seeing. I also, on the first page, reduced overtime. We really try to limit our overtime, and I decreased it last year. This year, down $1,000. We're hoping to continue to limit that. On page 68, you'll see all those benefits that Jen talked about, all those acronyms for administration. And health insurance is the larger increase there. Our health insurance premiums are on a calendar year, whereas we're on a July-June fiscal year. So for the first 6 months, we know what our rate will be. It's the second 6 months we're guessing. So we usually put in an 8% rate adjustment for those second 6 months. On page 69, you'll see our travel and meetings and training. And our contingency account, travel and meetings and dues and fees from the previous page allow our staff to attend variety of trainings in order to stay current with state statutes as well as gain skills. On training and education, we have an $1,800 increase this year. We do have 2 staff who are currently taking college-level financial classes in accounting. One is working towards a degree and the other is taking additional work in order to take on more job responsibilities. Our contingency account, we have a small increase there. That is what pays for the town-wide holiday event that we do in December, and then we do a summer barbecue in July. And we also, do personnel appreciation gifts, so based on years of service, and so that covers that. On page 70, we get into our utilities. You can see our heating, fuel, our telephone expense, our water, internet. We have had changes in our internet service as well as phone services. We've had to sign new contracts, and we have had to increase our internet speeds both up and down for most departments. You'll see our printing costs decreased, and that's because last year we went to a different printing method for our annual report. We were able to save a substantial amount of money. We're about half of the cost that we were just a couple of years ago now. In our expert and professional line on page 71, this is where the majority of our IT services are paid from. We do house servers both at the police department as well as town hall. We have a variety of software programs that we use, some in combination with the state, and some for our own services. We also have emails for all staff as well as some committees. And so we contract out that IT work. We don't have someone internally do that for us. And so the majority of that cost is covered here, and departments do pick up some smaller portions of that. Our annual audit fees are here, as well as our data processing. So this is where you'll see some of the software licensing fees that we pay. Trio is our financial software. So it allows us to do all our general ledger, accounts payable, accounts receivable, as well as taxes and sewer billing, as well as our lien processes in both of those. On page 72, you'll see where we're into more of our operating supplies, office supplies, postage, and photocopiers. So certainly postage for all our tax billing and other mailings come out of this account. We do a lot of mailings. You will note operating supplies has been reduced by $1,000. And for us, it's just office supplies and operating supplies were similar accounts. And so I've done away with the operating supply account, and we'll just use the office supply account. Tracy has covered ballot machines and town clerks. Our building maintenance and repairs and maintenance, we're looking at a $1,000 increase there. Our contract for janitorial services has increased this past year. We have talked in the past about having a facilities maintenance person. We have somebody who comes to town hall to clean twice a week. Somebody comes to this room once a month. Somebody comes to police about once a month. Otherwise, you're seeing the staff are doing the cleaning. And so Parks and Rec, you hire somebody just once in a great while. So we don't have somebody that's maintaining and sometimes looking at building facilities. So that is something that we didn't include in this year's budget, but we're maintaining our contracts that we currently have. This also includes our contracts for monitoring our HVAC system. So I didn't cover every single line, but certainly tried to cover the majority of the administration account. And the on page 74 is our graph, which shows that most of the administration account, as you can see, is personnel and benefits. But I don't know if anybody has any questions or feedback.
Lori, do you know what version of Windows you're on?
We're on Windows 10.
Okay.
Yeah, we just had to replace a couple of computers and upgraded some RAM and some others, but we're on Windows 10 now. Werner, you're up. So we're going to move to page 75, which is the Zoning Board of Appeals. And Werner, you might want to hit that mic so it's taller for you.
All right, that'll work. All right, good evening, everyone. For those of you that I haven't met, I'm Werner Gilliam. I'm the Director of Planning and Development, and I oversee the planning, code enforcement, and assessing departments, as well as a number of different committees and boards that we have here in town. So for the first budget item that we're going to just review is going to be the budget request for the Zoning Board of Appeals. It's, as you can see, it consists of some funds for training for ZBA members, as well as advertising costs. Important to know these advertising costs are related specifically to appeals or variance requests as they come in, and this is essentially as a pass-through account as folks reimburse us for advertising and postage.
So when we say it's a pass-through account, the expenses are on this side, any revenue comes in through the revenue line, but we do have to still budget for the expense.
Next account that we'll look at is on page 79. This is the budget account for the Growth Planning Committee. So the Growth Planning Committee is the committee that is tasked primarily with working on the town's comprehensive plan. So it's a long-standing committee. We've had it for a good number of years. They're currently in the process of working with our consultants on the rewrite of the comprehensive plan that we're in mid-process. This particular line here is for expert and professional services, miscellaneous expenses related to their needs. For instance, if we were to do another survey or things of that nature, that's what this budget would be used for.
So it's a placeholder then at this point. You don't know of something that's happening.
That's correct,
Yep.
yes.
So I'm gonna do legal fees next, but you can hang out right there if you want,
Good, yep.
since you caused most of my legal budgets. So. Page 81 is our legal budget. So, the legal budget is, we never plan to spend any legal money, but we use based on past history or things that may be coming up. So, for example, if our union contract was up for negotiation, we might budget a little more in labor, personnel and union legal costs because we might anticipate additional funds. You can see that we have legal costs for ordinance development, ordinance compliance, enforcement and appeals. Who is that? Oh, that's Werner. All those. And then we have administration and general services, personnel and union, and then special project contracts. And we had Goose Rocks Beach, but we no longer have those costs. Yay! So you can see that each year, the actuals may get close to what we budgeted and they may be over, but what we focus on is the bottom line, that we're not over expending. We do have a variety of legal needs. We can either, our general attorney is Amy Chow with Drummond Woodsum. We also can use municipal associations, legal team for general municipal legal questions. And then sometimes we do need to hire someone with a particular specialty because of an issue that develops. So this year we are looking to keep our legal budget fairly flat, even though we have had an increase in our hourly rate over the past year. And we are seeing a reduction because of Goose Rocks Beach.
Lori?
Yep.
On page 82, the housing trust for legal was 15,000 change. Where'd it go? What was it for?
We created it with that money, basically, correct? We gave them $15,000 for their legal fees to create their trust.
The selectmen authorized some of the legal budget to help set the trust up as a separate, we went from a committee, remember we had a housing committee? And then they allowed for some of those funds to be sent to develop the documents in order to create a housing trust. If we go to insurance on page 83 and 84, we have the retirement health savings plan, as we talked about. This is an amount that we budget each year if employees maintain a certain level of sick time. We buy down that sick time at a prorated portion and put it into a retirement health savings plan for them. The health retirement account and fees is part of our health insurance plan. So we do budget for someone to manage that as well. And it goes in combination with a lower premium health insurance program that the town went to several years ago. The workers' comp, we've talked about that. We are seeing a reduction in our premium due to a lower mod rate. Some of the workers' comp is covered here and some of it is covered in our wastewater budget. Our unemployment, we do through Maine Municipal Association, and it's actually an account that they keep on our behalf. We don't buy a premium. So based on how we are doing with unemployment, we may have years, and you can see we're seeing a reduction because we haven't had unemployment, so our account is in good stead. We previously needed, through our past vendor, to purchase bonds for Jen and I that were separate. Under our new vendor, bonds are included for all municipal officials as part of our public officials package. You also see that we have liability and fleet in our public officials coverage, and those are the estimated premiums for the coming year. Does anybody have any questions on insurance? If not, then I'm gonna go to page 85. So community development. So what is community development? Community development is David Powell sitting in the room back there. Community development is being able to see Mike Weston on the screen here. Community development is our website. It is our newsletter, our communications model. So you can see in here the salary and wages for our videographers who tape our meetings and the associated costs for those. And our internet into this building, so we have to have a high-speed upload here for the streaming services and to upload it to our cable. And then we've talked about the newsletter. We're now mailing that out twice a year to every property taxpayer. And so there's been an increase there for postage. Our website, you know, we have a slight reduction in. We do monitor that through a third party, and we maintain most of that in-house as well as our domain name. And then our operating supplies for things that are related to cable meeting production here. So that is our community development account.
All right, I have a question. You had mentioned a couple of sections ago that we do a lot of mailings. Is it possible to encourage residents to go online more to pay things? I'm assuming that staff are doing the mailings?
So
Any
it
time to do the
depends.
mailings?
Sometimes we're doing the mailings in-house, and sometimes we have a third party do them. So for our property tax bills, for example, we have a third party that does all that mailing for us. Sometimes when we had the recycling mailing, you know, there are mailings that come up more immediate, then we'll do those in-house. You know, when you get a letter every spring that says, do you want a Goose Rocks Beach sticker, and do you want your Dock Square parking vouchers, those are done in-house. So yes, we try to encourage people to go online. I would tell you that I have grown to accept that most of the people in this community like paper. And when we have done surveys online and we have done them on paper, we have gotten an extreme return rate. Even if people have to fold it up and mail it or bring it to the town office, people here still really like paper.
Would you have any idea as far as town budget-wide, how much we're spending on mailings? As far as contractors,
Yeah, I mean,
staff time,
we could add
supplies,
it
et
up.
cetera?
I don't know off the top of my head, but we could certainly add
I was
that up.
thinking maybe if you could offer some inducement to say, we'll give you a 5% break or 10% break on whatever that cost is, so share some of that cost back, maybe that would encourage more people to go online or come in person to the town hall when they're driving by or something.
I think all businesses see this with an older population. It's just really tied to the age of the recipients.
Yeah.
And it's gonna be really tough, even when you put some incentive out there, because they just if you stop sending things by paper, they won't get it.
Mm-hmm.
They're done with it. So it's unfortunate.
Well, they do forget as well. And so who's at fault if it doesn't get there, you know, because you forgot to go online?
Yeah.
It's really a complex problem.
Actually, there are some people in this town that do not have
Right.
computers.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
I know quite a few of them.
I would rather do it online, but I have just grown to accept that that's who they are. And so if my goal is communication, I've got to do it in a format I feel like that works for them.
Or even like a central, we're having town voting, or we're having general town things. Maybe we could hand out things at that time, and they would be getting paper rather than us putting a stamp on it and
Yeah.
holding it manually.
And we
It
do
ain't gonna happen.
That's not gonna happen.
Okay, on, let's go.
Good idea, though.
I'm just trying to be creative. That's
I think that's good.
It saves some dollars.
I think that's good.
Next generation.
I like your
Yeah,
train of
next-
thought, Steve.
Okay.
Next generation.
Okay.
I can't resist.
If you wanna know what's going on in town electronically, see Dave
See
James.
Dave.
Yeah.
Well, you know, the reason we have 250 residents in the town that subscribe to the KRA newsletter, is this thing on? Can you
Yes.
see it?
Yeah.
Subscribe to the newsletter is because we reduce an hour and a half or 2 hour Board of Selectmen's meeting and a 2.5 hour planning board meeting down to 2 or 3 pages of highlights of what's going on there. Whereas if you go online and you look at the minutes of those meetings, you get
You fall asleep.
But our attendance at our
8,
selectmen's
10, 8 or
meetings,
9
I
or 10
think you're doing a
pages
great
of
job,
stuff
Dave.
that you're never going to read through, because it's
Right.
got all the detail, well, so-and-so said this, so-and-so said that, doesn't hit the highlights. So if the town, and because I'm going to turn 85 in July, and I'm not sure how many more years I'm going to be around to do the KRI newsletter.
Oh,
It might be something that the town might want to consider, town editor.
you can't
that
retire
issues
till you're
the
100,
newsletter.
Dave. You can't retire till you're 100.
Yeah. Anyway, that's my pitch.
It's a good thought.
All right.
Can you hear everything okay?
Yo, Mike,
Yeah. Yeah, he's shaking his head.
what are you drinking, Mike?
Shaking it.
Got
All right.
cold beer there.
Yeah.
So if we
Can
go
you
to,
guys hear,
go ahead.
We can
can
hear
you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I think it's important, given,
Go ahead.
I'm getting an echo, that's my problem here. It's important that with the older folks in town, including myself, that we put things in writing and mail to
Yes.
individuals. And it's supplemented by the KRA, which does an excellent job of synthesizing what is going on in town. I just think it's important that we keep this mailing up.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, that's it.
No, that's good.
You're right.
Thank you, Mike.
It's nice to get something other than Capital One promotional offers in my mail.
So if we go to page 89, the planning and development budget,
99.
it says 99 on there, but it should say 89.
I've got one that says 89, so go to 99 to be 89. Got it.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's all right.
So this might be a time when the selectmen might want to back off a little because Werner's got a few slides to share.
So, as I introduced before, the Planning and Development Department, we consist of code enforcement, building inspections, land use planning for the community long-term and short-term. We provide staff from multiple boards and committees as well as all of your property assessment information. So I have the pleasure of working with a great staff, and we manage quite a bit of historical resources that include current building and development information, which also includes lots of older historical maps and surveys that have been collected over the years. So just as an introduction of the staff, you have a well-experienced group of professionals that work in our office. Becky Nolette handles the property assessments. Andrew Welch is one of our code enforcement officers, as well as Greg Reed, who works with us part-time. Lisa Harmon is our department admin, who keeps us on schedule. And I handle your planning functions, code enforcement, and staff representation for numerous boards and committees. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about who we are, just so that you understand. Our budget is primarily focused on wages and benefits and other necessary administrative tools to help us with what we do. So I'd like to give you just a little bit of a recap as far as what we saw for activity over the last year. So this just gives you a little bit of an idea of what we've seen in terms of development project costs and permits that we've issued. As you've probably seen around town, and certainly the data shows it, we've seen quite an increase in development costs and permitting. We had, I would say, a little bit of a leveling, from what we've seen in terms of the last number of years. But we're still, last year we saw, in terms of declared construction value, over $37 million in declared construction value. And I say declared because that's what people tell us. That's not necessarily what they actually spend, but that's what they tell us. And that include, brings us in terms of permits, a little under 600 permits, so 595 different types of permits that we issue. And I can provide you all with the detail of this information if you like, but out of our 595 that we've issued, the majority of them are, there's usually a plumbing permit that's involved with most of these projects. We see the majority are significant residential renovations, but we certainly have a fair amount of new construction, as well as quite a bit of replacement construction as well. Skip one. Oh, maybe not. One slide that you don't have here that skipped over, but I can give you the statistics. Over the course of last year, our field inspections, we did over 1,000 field inspections over the course of last year. We had over 400 in-office appointments with residents and contractors. And in terms of board meetings, that would include everything from planning board meetings to meetings with, I'm on a number of other boards where I represent the town. We had about 183 of those types of meetings over the past year. So I'd like to show also to folks how we compare in terms of what we take in for income. This relates to our building permits, planning board fees, and things of that nature, and how that relates to our budget that we put forward. The goal that I've had over the past number of years is that, at a minimum, that we maintain a budget that's at least 60% financed via fees versus 40% via property tax. And what we have projected for this fiscal year puts us at about 75% financed via our building permit fees, and about 24% that comes through property tax. So what's coming up for the next year? We continue to anticipate that construction activity is going to continue, at the approximate rate that we've seen the past couple of years. We're challenged to make sure that we have good staff resources that allow us to keep our folks educated in terms of our new construction techniques, legal issues, and things of that nature. We have a fairly strict regimen of educational requirements that staff has to meet. As a code enforcement officer, there's 9 different certifications that have to be maintained. Becky, who's our certified main assessor, also has a pretty hefty amount of continuing ed that has to be maintained. So for next year, there's some of the bigger things that we have on the horizon. We continue to have our love-hate relationship with FEMA regarding floodplain mapping. I say every year, gosh, I think this year we're going to get it wrapped up. But so I'm going to say again this year, gosh, I hope this year we're going to get it wrapped up. We're in the midst of an appeal process with 6 other communities. We believe we have a resolution that we've been working towards with FEMA, where we have appealed the current preliminary maps that you see on our map. We've had significant studies that have been done that we did in a joint effort with all these other communities, and we believe we've worked towards a resolution that will allow for what we believe are more accurate maps than FEMA has produced over the past number of years. Continuing, we have our public process for the update to the comprehensive plan. I'd encourage everyone to go to the town website and take a look at the 2030 comprehensive plan tab that will give you some great insight as far as what the growth planning committee is working on for our comp plan. As part of last year's budget, the town approved a market analysis and evaluation update. As we learned last year, or in last year's budget process, our construction tables for property assessments has not changed since 2009, and so we've seen probably somewhere in the neighborhood of a 30% increase between 9 and now in terms of construction values. So we're in the process of doing that analysis as we speak. And that includes a valuation update for areas where we've seen some significant changes in terms of real estate sales. And then the last piece that you'll see is a significant change in the budget, and Lori mentioned it earlier. As part of this collaboration that's being managed through Southern Maine Planning and Development Commission, we've hired a coastal resiliency coordinator that we'll be working with next year. And so the sustainability coordinator, as we've said, is going to be working with our coastal communities. What we really understood last year and found out last year that all communities are working towards dealing with issues of sustainability. We all had somewhat different approaches, which led to I think some difficult challenges in terms of comparison as it related to data inputs. Everyone was figuring out their carbon footprint, just slightly different, and so we all recognized that it was important to have some consistency amongst communities so that we can track what we're doing and come up with a good plan for the upcoming future. So as far as the budget is concerned, starting on page 89, again, the majority of our budget, is focused on our personnel costs, and so I won't go through all of the, the descriptions here, as we've kind of gone through the acronyms before. It's on page 89. On page 90, you'll see we have. I'll call to your attention our dues and fees. This relates to our, professional associations, that we have as a member community with Southern Maine Regional Planning. We have dues and fees we pay. 1207 and 1208 relate specifically to travel and meetings and training and education for staff. As I mentioned before, our continuing education requirements that we have. 2006 has our expert and professional line. You'll see in there that that's the account that houses the $15,000 for the sustainability coordinator. Data processing. You heard a little bit about Trio. That's the tax billing side of the house. We maintain, our software system that we have is called Vision. It's our appraisal software, and that houses all of our property tax information. One other service that we provide for folks that is used quite heavily is our GIS mapping. It's our Geographic Information Systems mapping that's available on the website. I have to tell you, of all of the tools that I use, that is the one that gets used the most. That is one of those tabs that stays up and is up and running all the time. When folks come in and they want to talk about their properties in terms of, what do my neighbor's property lines look like, to what do you think I can do on my property, that's the tool we go to. And it's all information that's publicly available. And so, we stay diligent in terms of making sure that that information is as accurate as possible. Office supplies are, all things that we need to keep the office running, and everything else just relates to our operations as well. So, does anyone have any questions that I can answer for you?
Doing a good job.
Great, thank you.
One of the silly things that struck me under your first slide, what was a tent permit or whatever?
Tent permits?
Yeah.
So within the ordinance, tents are recognized, so when we're talking tent permits, we're talking like large event tents.
Okay.
So I would say probably our biggest customer for those is the Nonanum.
Okay.
And that's really what that addresses.
Okay.
Yep.
But you also need a permit to put up a temporary tent shelter too, don't you, Warner?
Yeah, so if you're hosting an event on your property, so say you have, you've got a relative that has a wedding, these are essentially, think of them as a temporary structure permit. Many places, that have these types of events don't have areas that would normally meet setbacks or things of that nature. So these are temporary, essentially it's a permit for this temporary structure. And each property gets an allowance of 30 days per calendar year. Like I said, I mentioned the Nonanum. They're very diligent in terms of how they put their schedule together. I usually get at the beginning of the year, they have their weddings and events all laid out, and we get the schedule and everything's, we get them usually squared away right at the very beginning. So.
Thanks.
Yep.
You gonna have a tent, you gonna have a party, Dan?
On a nice day.
Okay.
No.
So you
traffic.
don't need a tent.
Thank you.
Thanks, Warner.
Thanks, Warner.
Thanks, Warner.
I never thought of that damn tent.
So next we have Chief Sanford, who will review our police department and communication budget.
Good evening, folks. I won't kill you a PowerPoint. And first of all, I'm your chief of police, and I apologize for the bags under my eyes. I had grandkids sleep over last night.
Oh my God.
And I forgot what it was like to have an 11-month old wake up 3 times in the night to feed them. So I'm like, oh dear God, how did I do it? But anyways, just to give some of the new folks an idea, the police department, we have 14 full-time officers. So 3 of those officers are dedicated during the school year to the schools. They are under contract with RSU 21. The RSU pays 75% of the salaries. That is new over the last couple of years. I think this is year 2. And I can tell you feedback from students and parents. I used to get a lot of thank you notes. Compared to where I came from, I get a lot here. They've almost doubled, if not tripled, because of the work those folks are doing in the schools. And I think it's kind of their unseen heroes in a way, because they may not do big life-saving things, but they're dealing with our younger folks, and they're making big impacts in their lives, so they're important. Along with those 3 folks, myself, the deputy chief, and a detective. And one thing I forgot to mention was the SROs, when they're not in the school, they come back to the department during the summer, so they supplement my patrol staff. So if you take out those 6 specialties, I've got 8 folks that actually work the patrol function here in Kennebunkport. And if you go to numbers, you'll know that you need 5 people to have one 8-hour person going 24/7, and that's what we are. We're a 24/7 operation. So you can imagine that we don't have enough. I need 10 folks just to work the road to have, theoretically 2 people working all the time. And we're unique here. Sometimes I have just one officer working. Don't like to do it, but if, staffing-wise and budgetary restraints, it's just impossible for me to always have 2 people working. What do I do as a police officer here in Kennebunkport? Just to kind of give you an idea, I consider myself a working chief. There are those blue blood chiefs that sit in the glass tower in a suit and they do all the big decisions. And then there are folks in between, and here we're a small agency. We do a lot. It's just not police related. I've had officers shovel out, driveways for older folks that are, in emergency trying to get to a hospital. I shovel off the roof of the police department when we got too much snow. I clean toilets. And let me tell you, I thought my 3 sons were bad, but we won't go there. Anyways, because I'm kind of a neatnik. So, I mop floors, and I also handle calls for service and all of my other chief details. So I can tell you we're a good working group together. We all pitch in, and that's unusual in the police world. Usually, you don't touch those other things. There's somebody else to do it. So I thank them, but you folks really get a good bang for your buck out of that. I always get Mr. Beard to ask me about the crime, so I'll address that right now, Mr. Beard. Our crime rate is half what the county average is, so that's really good. I think we're at like 7.8. The county average is like just shy of 14%. We really got stung in 2018. If you remember, those mail fraud folks were going around stealing the mail. We did catch them, which was a good thing. But we have the normal crime that you have in any other community on a smaller scale. But I see that we have a lot of financial crimes here, folks that unfortunately fall victim to the scams and things of that nature. That's a tough thing, and it's a lot of work. I can tell you, on a larger scale, the detective, he spent 7 years on a case where we had a priest that had committed some bad crimes back in the 70s. He's able to spend 7 years and build that case and actually got a conviction out of it in a couple of years ago. And it stuck, which is huge. But it took 7 years, and that's a lot of police work. So, we do good things here, and my officers, and I'm very lucky to be part of that team, and I appreciate your support. My budget doesn't have a lot of big surprises in it. My contractual increases are driven by salaries, in the contract. I do have an increase this year, pretty big, as far as my numbers go. In the overtime budget, I have new state mandated training that we have to pull off in the next fiscal year. They call it mechanics or arrest, restraint, and control. It's good. It's a 3-year process. The state has mandated it through the Criminal Justice Academy. And basically what that is, it's like, it's all those ninja moves that people think we can do when we're trying to arrest people that really don't work. That they teach us and we go over, but I wonder sometimes, but it's a state mandate for us to be certified to keep us from having legal fees go up. So I'm going to have to do that, and it's about 56 hours. All of us have to go through it. And it'll be for the next 3 years. Pardon me, I'm still trying to. I've been yelling at my grandson, trying to calm him down. Another big increase, telephone costs. I have a lot of phone lines, they call them copper lines, into the police department, into communications. Those are the hardwired lines. You know, I think I went in the wrong business. I should have been in the telephone business, because, you know, they up the increases, there's not much I can do about it. And we also have some increases because of the data usage and the data speed that we need to be able to complete our mission. You know, with all the data, we use a large amounts of data. As far as the police department budget goes, if there's any questions with any specific line item, everything is driven because of contractual issues and rate increases.
So on page 102 in your book too, we do have the crime data for 2018. By the time we get the crime data, it may seem old to you, but this is the most current data that we have in comparison to York County. And the chief has also done an analysis on the types of offenses we've had, and he has them listed by month on page 103. So you can get a feeling for the activity level, seasonal, and the types of activity.
Yep. We see a lot of thefts. When the tour buses arrive, we'll see a lot of thefts out of our stores down in Dock Square. People visiting, they're in and out, unfortunately. And it's amazing to me, a lot of our businesses will wait like a week or two before they report something, and it makes it tough for us to solve that crime if I'm already behind the ball a week or 2 weeks. You know, I've even had burglaries reported a week late, and I'm just like, oh, please don't do that to me. Tell us right away. So, you know, obviously our crime statistics, we're busy when the population's here. It's very busy, and we struggle to keep tabs on things, because, you know, you got your normal speeding complaints and things of that nature that we're trying to handle while we're watching the beach, while we're you know, trying to manage everything else in town as well. Questions? Yes, sir.
Chief, you had mentioned that the telephone costs, they basically just say this is what the increase is gonna be, and you're like, okay. Do you shop carriers occasionally, or do we work with maybe the technology consultant that the town uses to maybe get some options?
Yeah, we're all, you know, that happens down at the town office, and they do a lot of that stuff.
Right now, we have a contract with Consolidated Communications as our phone and internet provider. And we do look at that every few years. And so part of it is also that we have ports. So this building is connected to Town Hall, which is connected to the police station. So we have a triangle. And so the way those lines are then shared, as well as our copper lines, and he has a number of copper lines because of communications dispatch up there as well. And then the internet availability for like streaming. So we have our cameras down at Dock Square parking lot, and those go up to the police department. And so we have had to increase that. I think we've done fairly well in terms of pricing. One of the other things in his budget is the GPS that wasn't previously budgeted in the past. He tried to find the money to pay that bill, and we thought this year we should put it in.
I haven't funded that I've had it for 2 years now, and it hasn't been funded. And I've been over in my telephone expense line about $1,500 the last 2 years, so.
Chief, I'd like to say that your speed monitoring sign out front on North Street has done a lot to help slow down traffic coming into town.
Yeah, I was pretty angry. I was sitting out there before the meeting, and I watched somebody go by, and as it was blinking 35, and I was like,
oh,
now you're gonna have a conversation with me. So we went around the corner, we had a conversation. I'm like, don't tell me you didn't see the sign.
Well, if it makes you feel better, Craig, when I pulled in, somebody came by and they were doing 35, and your officer that was out here took off after him.
Yep.
Oh.
Yep.
Good.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you still have to cover, or the town have to cover expenses when anybody in the Bush family comes and all that need extra security?
So, we used to assist them quite a bit. I can remember when I was in my other world and we would come down here, we would get some financial assistance federally, and that stopped, I want to say, late 90s. I don't wanna tell you something's wrong, but I think it was late nineties. We don't help them like we used to, and since I've been here, I'm start my 10th year in July, and we have not gotten anything, but we don't help them like we used to, so. Yep.
So if we go to page 105, this is the communications budget, so can you just kind of explain the differences between police and communications?
Yeah, so, excuse me, communications, you know, I've got a little explanation here. So what does our communications department actually do? They're our dispatch center. I have 4 full-time folks, so for those folks that really don't understand, so when someone dials 911, that call goes to a public safety answering point. And currently, the state has 24 of those PSAPs, or public safety answering points. At the PSAP, they must obtain what and where the emergency is, and depending on the type of the call, send that call to the appropriate dispatch center for the dispatching of fire, EMS, and PD. So to add to that confusion, there are different levels of dispatch centers. So the highest level that you could be is a PSAP dispatch center. So they actually take the 911 call. They have to start, so when fire and EMS calls come in, the PSAP answering point or a certified EMD dispatcher has to start emergency medical protocols. So they ask a myriad of questions. I'm sure some of you folks have probably been through that and asked me and say, why do I have to answer these questions? But they're really important. So the highest level are those folks. And then the next step below that would be, below the PSAP is the dispatch center that actually has those certified EMD and EFD dispatchers. So the PSAP would take the initial phone call, send it to those certified dispatchers, and then they would start the emergency medical or emergency fire protocols and then send out the appropriate services. To be certified to do those protocols, you have to have a large amount of infrastructure, software, and you have to have at least 2 dispatchers on at all times to successfully do that. Here in Kennebunkport, we're at the lowest level, which is below that, and that is, we are a basic dispatch center where we actually are dispatched. Our PSAP is located in York. So York would take a 911 call, and if it's an emergency medical dispatch call or an emergency fire call, they're going to do the protocols, and while they're doing the protocols on the line, they're going to have another dispatcher call Kennebunkport and have Kennebunkport dispatchers send to either police, fire, or rescue. Yeah, we're
How
a
does that
small-
work if the town doesn't have its own dispatch?
If the town were not to have their own dispatch?
Yeah, who would the PSAP directly contact the local EMS or fire?
That is an option. So if we were to, let's say York is a PSAP. So if we were to be at either York or Sanford or Biddeford, they're all PSAPs, they would then dispatch us, fire, EMS, and police to the call. Another option would be to have the PSAP in one of those PSAPs, and have another dispatch agency like Wells. Wells is right off the top of my head right now, where they have certified EMD and EFD dispatchers, and they have more than one on it in 24 hours. They have all the time. So they could then dispatch us to those calls. So there's kind of 2 options, and I know sometimes it can be confusing, but does that answer the question, sir?
I think so.
How much time is involved in that? It seems to me like
So it can vary. I mean,
wasteful.
It can vary. I mean,
if someone's having a heart attack and we're going through 3 different places, I'm still having a heart attack
yeah.
while they're talking.
Understood, but you're still gonna have to be sent through those protocols unless you hang up on the dispatcher. They're required by state and federal regulations to go through those protocols.
If you hang up on them, they call you back though.
We can't call you direct then.
You could,
I mean, call the
call
communications.
We would
Communications
never
direct.
recommend that people call us directly.
No. I never recommend
Okay.
circumventing the 911 system. There's been a lot of things out there that have tried that, but people do. And then when they do, we do the best we can with what we've got. You may have a dispatcher that doesn't have a lot of time on, that doesn't know all those protocols from when some of the older dispatchers were. And they're gonna send out the fire and EMS as soon as they can.
So, I mean, back in the old days, when I was in Oxford, Maine, we had a dispatch, we had a red phone. It was a hard, it was literally like Batman's red phone or Commissioner Gordon's red phone. And it was at the general store where the fire chief ran a general store, Stedman, and then he also was fire chief. And so if you called because you had a fire issue, it would ring on the red phone and maybe the clerk would answer, maybe the fire chief would
Flash the
answer.
bat signal and they come out.
And they would then contact by radio people, and people would go to the station and they would go out. And so as time has progressed, because of liability sometimes associated with responses and a desire to have consistency in how 911 is handled, whether I am in Oxford, Maine or San Diego, California, there is this philosophy within public safety that is amassing that there should be a way this is handled. And whether you've been on the job a month or 30 years, you should be asking the same basic information so that we can send out the correct equipment, the correct personnel. The personnel are informed about what they're going to encounter when they get there. And that we are also prioritizing calls. So I have a cat in the tree, I'm having a heart attack, my kid is in the pool and he's drowning, And so, that is the reason for some of these things. You can argue about whether life is better or life is worse, but the life is what it is now. So right now, we are at the point where the state of Maine has adopted emergency medical protocol as well as emergency fire protocol. That changed our world with our dispatch center. And we made the decision to not invest in continuing to be a high-level dispatch center because it wasn't just infrastructure and software, it was personnel. And when you look at the number of calls we get in a given year, it doesn't make sense to have two people sitting there 24/7. So we have looked in the past and discussed whether or not continuing to have our own dispatch center makes sense. The next thing in the lineup is emergency police protocols. So when there's now, if you call for fire or medical, that dispatcher has to stay on the line with you, take you through the questions, but stay on the line with you until a responder gets to you and takes over. So you can imagine if I'm staying on the line with you and I'm the only dispatcher in Kennebunkport and another call comes in or there's an accident on the side of the road and 20 people on their cell phones are calling to tell me about that accident, I can't successfully be on the phone and do that other portion of the job. So we made the decision to go to York. York has been a good partner. We have a contract with them to be our PSAP answering point, and then we have a separate piece of our contract that deals with them dispatching for those EMD and EFD protocols. They then turn it over to us for the radio, so we kind of have a two-side system. And one of the questions is, are we delaying response? Because there are. People will argue one way or the other on that, but that's a question. And also the fact with emergency police protocols and a change in staff, another argument is, well, these people know our town and know our roads. And as with a lot of our employees, we're seeing retirements and new people coming in. And so the new people don't always know our roads like the old people did. And so the question is, could there be potential operational savings and could we have consistency in management of that? So that's something we'll talk more to the Budget Committee and Selectmen about as we talk about our capital investment, because as we look at radio infrastructure investment, we're going to need to make that decision in the next couple of years. That's where we are at this point, but more changes are in the future.
So to go through the budget for the communications, contractually there are increases. And let's see, the salary and benefits, utilities, I went up a little bit because electricity is projected to go up, and I was over last year. Heating fuel is up a little bit. That's because of pricing that's negotiated and actual usage. Internet's up because, of course, Spectrum has to go up as well. And then our expert and professional, it just got moved from another contract line, another line item, so it just got moved from someplace else, from the maintenance contract lines. Data processing went up, and then if you look at the maintenance contracts, that's where it goes down, because IT stuff was moved around to a different line. And then let's go down to radio replacements. So we got to talk about the capital plan in nights to come, but right now, the portable radios that we have were purchased through a grant many years ago, which we cannot use anymore because we used it once. But my radios that I currently have can't be fixed anymore. I was told by my vendor that the Motorola radios can't be fixed anymore. I used to send out 2 or 3 a year. It cost between $500 to $800 for the normal repair. So they can't be fixed anymore. So now I got to start to replace them. I don't expect them all to fail right away, so I have in the budget here to replace 3 a year, and they're $1,500 a piece. These radios. So they're not top of the line. They're good radios, but they're not the top of the line ones. But they would be compatible with any upgrades that we may elect to do in the capital plan.
Chief,
Yes.
those are radios for the police,
Yes, sir.
not fire.
Well, in the capital plan, when I talk about it, it's for town-wide.
Okay.
So my radios for this is just for the police radios.
Yeah.
But I gotta start replacing those, because if I lose one or two, because I can't repair them, I'm gonna be in big trouble.
So they will be digital then, they'll be
Yes, sir.
compatible with the future?
Yes. Other questions, concerns? Yes, ma'am.
How is the prescription drop-off doing? Is there a cost for that?
There is no cost. So we are partnered with the Drug Enforcement Agency. They actually do something for us. And they actually, they pick up twice a year. We bring them to a collection point, and they take them to Eco-Maine, I think, and they are burned, incinerated. And it's been very successful, and you folks are doing a great job, because Maine is still really good at, we're high every year. Maine is just turning in a lot of prescription drugs. So last year I changed it, and I actually volunteered to go get them if people had a hard time coming to the police station. But it's 24/7, there's a drop box up there, you can drop stuff off.
Thank you.
Tried to keep it short.
So,
Emergency management.
if we go to page 125, that is our emergency management account. Chief Sanford, one of the hats he wears is he's our emergency management director. And what we do is we place a certain amount of money in each year that goes to a reserve account, because certainly most years, we knock on wood, we won't need it. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so those funds, we actually partnered with Kennebunk and Arundel to provide the beginnings of not staffing, but equipping a shelter over at KES, over at the middle school in West Kennebunk. Just because sometimes, we just need some place for some folks to go. We've been lucky since I've been here. Folks are very resilient here, though, and stubborn, I think, in a way. I check on a lot of folks, and I've caught a lot of people shivering to death, and I'm like, God love you. I'm like, can we do something? But, that's what that money is. We've purchased blankets and cots. We're storing them over there, because some of the blankets and cots we had here, the mice liked, and they're just not functional. But that's what some of that stuff has gone to in preparations if we should ever need them.
So
That leaves animal control.
animal control is 127.
So, we used to have our own animal control officer here. Last year, I changed the way we did business to try to help out in that arena. We try to handle a lot of the animal complaints, if they're bites and things of that nature, loud barking dogs and things of that nature, but we've partnered with, someone else that is a certified animal control officer that will respond here. She's been very good. I've asked her to do a couple of things for me, look at horses, look at a bat, and she's been very good, and she will come over and get a dog if we have one. But I remind folks, the police department is not a drop-off shelter for animals, please. I really appreciate that, because it's tough. So we don't have the facilities for that. But it is working out, that partnership. We tried some other things and they didn't seem to work out, but it is working out well.
So we have a part-time person that kind of works on a contract basis. And then we have some funds in here for operating supplies. And then this is also, by state law, we have to have an animal shelter designated in a contract. So our animal shelter is the Animal Welfare Society, and they charge us on a per capita basis. So they haven't increased that the past few years. And so that's where that contract holds as well. So overall, we've seen a slight decrease because our new contract with our new animal control officer is actually less than it was previously.
Thanks for your support, folks. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that is all I had planned for this evening. As I said, next Thursday, we will continue the operational budgets. Is there any other information that people are looking for, or anything else we can do to assist? Let me know now, or if you think of it later.
Good job.
Move to
Would you
adjourn.
like
If I hear no questions, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
We have adjourned.
Thank you
Chairman,
guys
I
for
move we
showing up.
adjourn.
Boy, look at all these people. Fantastic, really is.
Al, I move we adjourn.
I'm not ready yet.
You're not right.
Oh, you're on
Oh,
a second. Mike, any other business? Do you have any business? Can you hear me?
Yep, no business.
By the way, thank you for showing up.
Hey, my pleasure, the wine helped.
The wine house.
yeah.
Don't rub it in.
How about you, Pat?
I'm good.
None.
Ed?
I already told you, I'm ready to adjourn.
Warren?
Well, do you want to go over some more budget?
So I heard a motion. I have a second. All in favor? Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys.